soulmates, glad I'm here with you again. You're welcome back if you're a returning subscriber. And if this is your first time of being on this channel, thank you so much for stopping by. This video is about how to make a dress. And it's basically this dress you're seeing on the screen. We're going to learn how to draft it, how to measure it, and how to sew it. So if that's what you would like to see, stay right here and don't forget to subscribe to this channel, like the video, give it a thumbs up, and also please turn on your notification bells. So let's get right into it. So the thing is, I want to use this part for the lower part of this dress. If you look at this dress, they used two different Ankara prints. For one type for the upper region and another type for the lower region. So for this lower region, I want to use this print, this fabric, and for the upper region, I'll be combining it with this fabric. So also you need the zip for the back part. Then this one is the breast part. I will be placing it at the breast region. This is my smooth tracing wheel. So this one I'll use it to transfer. By the time I'm done pattern drafting on the pattern paper, I would use this to transfer the marks. I'll be combining it with this. So this will be placed in between my pattern paper and the fabric. I'll be making use of my L-shaped multi-purpose ruler. This is my French curve for the armhole region, or neck region. This is my hip curve. When I'm drafting the lower part of this dress, I'll be using my hip curve. So this is the pattern paper I'll be using. I'll use this one for the top region, the front of it. So I've gone ahead to sketch. I always like to sketch my designs before I go into pattern drafting it. So if you look at it, you can see that from this shoulder region to the full length of the dress, so you know that you need the full length measurement. Another vertical measurement that you need to measure based on this style of dress is this shoulder point to the waist region. And if you look at it, if you can see it closely, you might not be able to see it closely, there's a cut at this front part of the dress. You can decide to put this cut also at the back or just at the front, depending on what you want. Because on this picture, you're not seeing how the back looks like, but from what I sketched here, I don't want any cut to be at the back. I just want to use that to shape it in, and my zip area to shape the waist in. So another vertical measurement you'll be using is the shoulder to nipple measurement. You place your tape at this shoulder and measure to the nipple of the client or yourself. Next is to measure your shoulder to under bust. That's from this area to where the bust ends. So that's also a vertical measurement. Another measurement you need to consider is the shoulder to right upper bust, because this is the right and this is the left. So you need to know so that when you're shaping it from here, you know where the cut you shape it from. Next measurement you need to take is the waist to the hip measurement, the distance of this waist to hip. So another measurement you need to take is the shoulder to the sleeve length. When I say shoulder to the sleeve, I am not referring to this point of the shoulder. I mean the shoulder, the slanted area of the shoulder. Place your tape at this point of the shoulder here, that's the edge of the shoulder, and measure downwards to where you want the sleeve to end. That's for the sleeve length. We were talking about the horizontal measurements needed for this dress now. The first one is the shoulder width, the wideness, the distance from this left shoulder to this right shoulder. And also another horizontal measurement you need to take is the nipple to nipple measurement. If you look at this dress, it has a dart, and the dart is coming from the armhole region. So it's going to come right to the nipple point. So you need to take the distance from the left nipple to the right nipple. So now we'll be talking about the circumference measurements. You measure the roundness of the bust, 360 degree. You do the same thing for the waist, and you do the same thing for the hip. So also, please take note of the sleeve area. You notice that this sleeve, the upper region of the sleeve is a bit slimmer than the bottom part. So now we're going to take our bicep measurements. Then also you need to take the circumference of your wrist. You put that measurement down, measure the volume. So if I'm measuring the circumference of my wrist, I can say the circumference should be 8 inches. So now that's for the round sleeve. Then to measure the volume of the bottom of the sleeve, you need to place your tape in such a way that, for instance, this is 20 inches. So it's guiding me to know that, okay, if I cut this sleeve rather, to be 20 inches volume at the bottom, this is how wide this area will be for me. Remember that I'm going to use gathers to gather it back at this tip here to become 8 inches. So I'll be gathering it back or pleating it back. But this volume here, the volume here is what I'm talking about. If I want it to be more dramatic, I can go as far as making it 24 inches. So that leads us to pattern drafting this dress. So this is the pattern we'll be using for the front part of this dress. So what you want to do is to fold it into two. If you fold it this way, the wideness, this place might not be able to accommodate your bust measurement. So you think about, okay, because we're pattern drafting the front part of this dress and it's the upper region. Remember that from what we sketched here, we are pattern drafting from this point here of the shoulder to the waist, and it's just for this front part first. The widest part from this part here is the bust, and so my bust is 34. If I divide it by 4, it should give me 8.5 plus sewing allowance and that allowance and all of that. If I fold like this, it might not be enough. That is why I'm folding like this. So that's what you want to take consideration to when you are folding your pattern. But if your pattern is wide enough, then go ahead. I'll be using this folded edge here for my center front, and I'll be using this upper region for my shoulder region. This is what you want to do first. This is why I said I always love to sketch, because while I'm pattern drafting, I'm looking at the style. Either I'm looking at it on my phone or I'm looking at it on the sketched pattern. You make an horizontal line, and this line represents your shoulder line. Now we don't need to make a vertical line here for the center front because I've already placed it on fold. This is my center front. I'm going to indicate center front, and this is my shoulder area, and I'm going to indicate shoulder line. So this line is shoulder line. Now the next thing I want to do is to take all my vertical measurements. So the vertical measurement we'll be using, based for the fact that this pattern is just for the front part and the upper region of the front part, we're dealing with the shoulder to the waist. So when I took that measurement, I have 15, so I'll be marking 15. Another vertical measurement I'll be marking is my shoulder to nipple point, which is 9.5, and also the shoulder to the under bust, which is 12.5. Now I'll make horizontal lines across these points. So I'm going to indicate on this line nipple line or bust point line, whichever one you want to use. And this is the under bust line. This is the waist line. So now I need to know where my the length of my armhole. I've always said that in my past videos, to get the length of your armhole from this shoulder line, you divide your bust measurement by 5 and you add 1.5 to it. When I did that, divided 34 by 5 and added 1.5, I ended up with 8.3. So I'll be placing my tape from this shoulder line and I'll mark 8.3. So I'll make another horizontal line on that 8.3. Now this horizontal line will become my bust line. Now the next thing I want to do is to measure my shoulder length measurement. So my shoulder width is 15, and it's an horizontal measurement which is supposed to be divided by 2. So 15 divided by 2 should give me 7.5, and I will mark that point here like so. I will also mark that on this bust line, I'll mark that 7.5 also, just to have a straight line. I'll connect those 2 points with a vertical line like so. So the next I want to do is to measure the center of this line. I just fold my tape like so and I mark the center points. What you want to do next is to measure the neck width. So I'll be taking the standard, which is 3 inches, and I'll be going down at this edge of the shoulder by 1 inch. So I'm going to connect this point to this point here, which represents shoulder slant. So the next I'll do is to measure the neck depth. So that measurement is I'll take 3 inches. So I'm going to connect this point to this point with my French curve because it's a round neck and it's not really like kind of deep. So we have to place our French curve in such a way that it will not look too deep. It's going to give us a smooth edge. So the next I want to do is to measure my nipple to nipple measurement on my nipple line. So my nipple to nipple measurement is 7. If I divide that by 2, because it's an horizontal measurement. So if I divide that by 2, I'll have 3.5. And then I'm going to add ½ inch to it because of my sewing allowance. So at the end of the day, I'll have 4 inches. So I'll mark 4 inches from the nipple line to the waistline. On the waistline, so I'm marking 4 inches. I'm going to connect the points together, my dart point. So this nipple to nipple is just guiding me to have my dart line. So this is my dart line. So what you want to do is to go up from the nipple point, mark 1 inch at the on top and 1 inch below. So 1 inch at the top and 1 inch below, and I will extend the dart line to that 1 inch. So the next I will do is to connect that point to this point here on the armhole line, like so. On my on the bust line, I will go in at this point on the dart line, which is on the under bust horizontal line. I will go 1 inch on both sides, and I'll connect with my curve. I can use freehand, so however it's convenient for you. And I would flip my French curve to the other side like so. So you don't want to use the curvy part, just the shallow curved part of the French curve. And now I have to smoothen this area so that we don't have a sharp edge. I'm just blending in the curve. So on this waistline, I'm going 1/2 inch on both sides. And then I'll connect with my ruler. Like so. All the sharp edges just blend with your French curve. You don't want the curves to be sharp. Just go right ahead, use your curve to smoothen out the sharp edges. On the bust line, I'll measure 1/4 of the bust circumference, that is the bust measurement divided by 4, and that should give me 8.5, so indicated it here. Then I will add 2 inches sewing allowance to it. Also on my under bust line, I would mark my under bust measurement, which is 7 1/4. And I would measure from the distance of this dart here, it's 2 inches. I'll add it back. So it's like we're taking off this dart off the measurement. So I have to replace that 2 inches that is going off. So I'll replace it here. Then I'll add my sewing allowance, 2 inches here. So on this armhole area, I'm going to go up by 1/2 inch and I'll come down by 1.5, total of 2 inches. Now this point here, I will connect it to this point here, which is the 1 inch I came above on the apex point. Remember, this is the apex point on the nipple line. That's the nipple point. So I went up by 1 inch and I came down by 1 inch. So on that 1 inch I came up by, I'm going to connect from that point to this 1.5. I'm going to connect it with my ruler. Now I'll do the same for this other part. So I'll use my marker, I'll blend the curves in such a way that it's not looking pointed. So anywhere that you notice that is looking sharp, you need to blend it. So there's going to be a little dart that will be taken off. So I need to replace this the same way I replaced this one here. I need to replace one because by the time I cut, this is where I'll be cutting through like this. So that's where I'll be cutting, and this other part I'll be cutting like this. So already we know that this part here will be missing. This little inches will be missing. So I'll measure the distance. It's like 1/2 inch, and so I need to add that 1/2 inch back to this point here. So I'm going to be connecting the points to this point like so. From here I will just connect it downwards. By the time we are stitching this dress, I will remeasure all my measurements to make sure that they are in line with all my circumference measurements. So we'll see that when I'm sewing the dress. So the next thing is for you to extend this line here. This one, you extend it and now whatever you've taken away from, by the time you measure from this point to this point. Remember, you're cutting downwards like this, so this part here will be missing, so we need to replace it on this line here. So I'm measuring from this point to this point, and I have 2 inches. That 2 inches, I'm going to add it back to the line here. So from this point here, I'm going to connect it to this point here with my French curve. So you know that initially, if we were doing the basic bodies, we're supposed to have done our normal armhole curve the usual way, but because this is a princess dart and it's going to have a cup, a breast cup, so that's why this point here has extended to this part here. So I'm going to extend this line by 1/2 inch for sewing allowance. Then I will connect it to this point here. So I'm just adding sewing allowance to the shoulder area. 1/2 inch is fine. And I will also add to the waist area, that's the bottom. That's what I'll use to connect this front, upper front, to the down part of the front pattern. And extend the line like so. So now I can cut. So this is off. So if we had not replaced these 2 inches that is going to go off at the under bust line, we'll be having shortage of measurements. That's why we needed to replace it. And also we added sewing allowance that we use to attach the 2 panels together. I mean this panel and this panel. So let me just open this up. And I have to remember this line is not part of what we drafted. This is like a previous line I had for another design. So I'll just, so that we're not confused, wondering where are all these lines coming from. So it's not part of what we just drafted now. So this is just what we drafted, and that's the measurement we're going with. So if you look at this, you can see that from even the sketch, you can see that there's a cut from this shoulder area connecting to the upper bust. Okay, let's say this is the right side and this is the left side. So if you look at this pattern, one part's supposed to be for the right and for the left. So we're going to use this part for the left. So I'm going to write left, while we're going to use this side for the right, so that we're not confused. Now looking at this, you notice that the right side is the one that is having the off shoulder part. The left side is where the shoulder separation is coming from and is connecting to the right side. So that's what we want to do here. So I'll be using my tape to tape this area together so that they are well synced. So what you want to do is to first of all use your pencil to be sure of the mark of how the shape is. You want to use your pencil to be sure of how the shape flows. So I'm going to go mark the center of this point here. From this point to this point, I'll mark the midpoint. This is the midpoint. So from here, I'm going to come down here, probably let's say I'll come down by 2 1/4. Now I'll just connect with my French curve. I'll just connect with my French curve from this point to this point. How I got this part was I measured from this shoulder point here to this point here, to where the off shoulder would get to. And when I took that measurement on myself, it was 6 inches. So I actually did 6.5. From this point here, I did 6.5 because I had added ½ inch to the shoulder measurement. That's ½ inch sewing allowance at the shoulder line. So I need to consider that ½ inch. By the time I sew it off, I would arrive at 6 inches. I hope you get that. So after taking that measurement here, I connected. You can use your free hand. I actually prefer to use my free hand than using a French curve because your free hand you can use your own initiative to try to sketch and draw how it is. So connected it to this part. I came down by 2 1/4, and then from here I just connected it straight to the armhole of the other area. That's the right armhole. By the time I cut through, I had to add ½ inch on this part and ½ inch on this part. You remember that this part, we're not throwing it away. We're going to use it to cut the other fabric. The fabric we're going to use for the sleeve, we'll be using from this place all through to this place. So you have to keep that. First of all, you already know this is your center line, which that's where the fold it into 2. Also, the new paper you're going to transfer it to, make sure it's on fold as well. Now align this fold here to this fold here. Now, so what you want to do next is to trace out the neck, because that's what we'll be using. You don't want to start drafting a new shape different from what we have initially. So we're just tracing the neck and the shoulder. This is sewing allowance, so just keep tracing to the edge. Yes, and then trace. So you stop here, because what we need now is to just extend it to where the armhole of this one ends. So for you to get your armhole length, we already know that armhole was gotten by dividing the bust circumference by 5, and we added 1.5 to it. When we did that, we had 8.3. But don't forget that because of this shoulder slant, we came down from the shoulder line by 1 inch. So if we've come down by 1 inch, it means 1 inch should go off from that armhole line. I hope you understand what I'm trying to explain. So meaning, in other words, it means that this line here so this was the line we had as our shoulder line. We came down from this line to this point here by 1 inch, which is this. From this point here to this point here, we came down by 1 inch. We only just added ½ inch for sewing allowance at the shoulder region. From this line now to measure our armhole line, which is 8.3, which is here. And so I'm going to connect, I'm going to rule an horizontal line at that point. So I'm measuring from here to here is the shoulder width measurement, which is 15. That was divided by 2 and we had 7.5. So to have a straight line, I'm going to mark 7.5 on this line. So because this is the front, if you've watched my video on drafting a basic bodice, you know that we always mark the center point of the armhole line. Like so. So this is the center point, and we'll go in, we measure on this line here the normal chest to chest measurement. That's like left chest to the right chest. For me, it's 12 inches. It's an horizontal measurement and you divide it by 2. So you should give you 6. But because of the sewing allowance, we're going to do 6.5. So that ½ inch is your sewing allowance. So what we are doing next is to measure the quarter of the bust measurement. The bust is 34 divided by 4 is 8.5. So I'm going to mark that here. And I'll add sewing allowance. So this paper is not enough, but on my fabric I'm going to add additional ½ inch. So I can only add 1.5 sewing allowance here. Go right ahead to connect from this point here to this point here. We're trying to cut out from here to here to here to here and to here like this. So this is right and this is left. So now this is right and this is left. So please indicate it though, so that you're not confused. Right and left. This is your center line. But what we want to do now is we want to trace out this shape here. So just align this shape here like so and follow what you have. So I'm just tracing the shape that I have here and I'm going to connect it to the other parts. So you can look for the other piece if you just want to have the right shape. So I'm tracing, just following the shape. So we know that this part is going to be attached to this part like so. Now I'm going to add ½ inch here. Please indicate, add sewing allowance, at least ½ inch. you can put arrow to indicate on this pattern you need 1/2 inch sewing allowance so that you can use it to attach to this part. This one too, you need 1/2 inch sewing allowance to this part. So here is going to have 1/2 inch sewing allowance when you're cutting it on your fabric. So I'm going to be adding just all through 1/2 inch. So I'll just be connecting it. So don't forget that this part here is sewing allowance. There's 1/2 inch sewing allowance here. So what we want to draft next is the back part of this dress. I'm going to be drafting that directly on this fabric. If you look at this back, there's no half cut. When we are done drafting the back, then I'm going to show you how to draft the down part of this front. Then we move to the sleeve. So if you look at what I have drafted here already, look at this mouth, this English mouth. We call this mouth, this edge here, English mouth. So there's English mouth at both edges. So I've folded my fabric in such a way that I can fold it I can fold it this other way, like this, and put here together. I want the pattern of the fabric to be in this form. So I have folded my fabric this way instead of this way. So whichever way you want to use, you can use. I folded it into 2. So this is 1 and this is 2. You want to know, how did I know the extent to which I should fold this fabric to? So I took the widest part of my measurement, which is the hip. If you look at the back pattern, the widest part is the hips. My hips is 41. So if I divide 41 by 4, I should end up with 10.25. So I added the zip allowance 2 inches to that 10.25, and I added an extra 2 inches for the sewing allowance. So in other words, I added 4 inches to 10.25, which gave me 14.25. Then now I used this part for my shoulder region. Remember, if you've watched my previous videos, I always emphasize on having a beginning line. So you have to rule a top line, which is going to represent your shoulder line. So this line here I ruled. This line here, I hope you can see that well. This, not this first line, the second line here. So you can see, if you look at it straight down, you see that there's a mark, horizontal mark. I did that, which is going to represent my beginning line, which is also the shoulder line. Then on this part here, I made a straight vertical line because the dress is coming from this shoulder downwards. So this other line I ruled here, I measured 2 inches from this folded edge here. So I placed my tape from this edge here and I measured 2 inches. I did that right from the top to the bottom and I made a straight vertical line. So this line I have here is my center back, and this one I have here is my shoulder line. I went ahead to mark all my vertical measurements. I placed my tape on this line. So this is the line I am talking about, not this one. This top line you're seeing here is the sewing allowance that I'm going to use on my shoulder. So I am talking about the second chalk white line I have here. So from this line I placed my tape here and I measured my armhole measurements. That's shoulder to my bust line, where my bust is. How did I get that? I divided my bust circumference, which is 34. I divided it by 5 and I added 1.5 to it. I ended up with 8.3. So I measured from here, from this point, 8.3. I went ahead to mark my shoulder to waist measurements, which is 15 inches. That's the 15 inches you can see here. Then from 15 inches, from my waist to hip is 8 inches. So I measured 8 inches from this 15. So I counted 8 inches from 15. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I marked that point and I made a straight horizontal line on that point, which is now my hip line. So I went ahead to measure 5 inches from my hip line downwards. That 5 inches I measured downwards is for the under or the bottom of my buttocks, because I want I want the dress to really look fitted. So if you want the dress to just not be fitted, to just be plain, you don't need to mark this 5 inches downward. But if you want it to really look shapy, you want to create room for the buttocks. If you're someone that your backside is a bit full, or the person you're making a dress for, the person's backside is a bit full, then you need to, and the person really wants the dress to look shapy, you need to make that measurement. So I went ahead to mark the full length of the dress. I decided to go with 42.5. Then the remaining part will be for the hem, to fold the hem inwards. So I went ahead to my horizontal measurement. On my shoulder line, which is this line here, I placed my tape from here and I measured my shoulder measurement, which is 15. So I divided that shoulder measurement, because it's an horizontal measurement, by 2. So it gave me 15 divided by 2 gave me 7.5. So I marked 7.5. That was how I got this line you're seeing here, 7.5, and I ruled it downwards to this bust line. So you want to make sure that that line is straight. If you want it to be straight, you can come and place your tape at this center back, not here. Please don't do that mistake to place your tape at the zip area. You need to place your tape at the center line, the center back, and you measure 7.5, and then you can connect. That is your armhole line. I went further to mark the neck width measurement on my shoulder line. So I placed my tape like so. I hope we can see this. I placed my tape like so, and I marked 3 inches, because the neck width is 3 1/4. I am not going to mark 3 1/4. I'm going to mark 3 inches, because when I turn the neck in with my facing or with the lining, I would need sewing allowance. So I decided to leave out that quarter as my sewing allowance. If you look at the drafting of this back pattern, you can see that the neck is not deep at the back for this style, so it's kind of shallow. So I decided to go down by 1 inch. So I placed my tape at that center back line and I marked 1 inch downwards. Now I used my French curve to connect that 3 inches width by the 1 inch that I came down by, and I connected it like so. Connected like so. That was how I came up with this neck width measurement. Then this ½ inch that I said I gave is for the sewing allowance. By the time I want to merge the front pattern to this back pattern, I will need ½ inch sewing allowance to merge both of them at the shoulder. So that is what this ½ inch is for. So you want to make sure that if you're drafting directly on your fabric, every sewing allowance you need, make sure that that sewing allowance is added. At this shoulder point here, I came down by 1 inch. So I placed my tape on that shoulder line, directly on that shoulder line, and I marked 1 inch downwards. That's for the shoulder slant. So I connected that 1 inch I came down by to this point here on the neck, the highest point of the neck. And so that ½ inch that I gave at this neck, I also gave that ½ inch at the shoulder area. To get the armhole curve, I've gone ahead to mark my circumference measurements. we are working on the circumference measurement now. We've worked on the vertical, we've worked on the horizontal. Now we are on the circumference measurement. On the bust line, I divided my bust measurement by 4. My bust is 34. And if I'm dividing by 4, it gave me 8.5. So I've gone ahead to mark 8.5. I placed my tape at the center back. So every measurement you're taking for the horizontal, you're making sure, you want to make sure that you don't do the mistake of putting your tape here. You have to put your tape at the center back, because this is just, if it's confusing you, you can just fold the zip side in for now until you're ready to work on that zip area. So now every measurement you're taking is from here. So I marked 8.5. I'm going to my waist area now. So my waist is 30. If I divide by 4, it gives me 7.5. Now I'll mark 7.5 here. Now there's something about the waist. The waist has contour. So you need to add that to the waist area. So for the darts area, I'm going to add 1 inch. So this 7.5, I'll add 1 inch for the darts. And I will show you how to shape the dart. So I'm going to the hip line. This is my hip line, and my hip is 41. If I divide by 4, it will give me 10.25. So I'm marking 10.25. Now for the bottom part, if you really want it to be pencil, whatever measurements we have on the hip, we're going to subtract 2 inches from it, depending on how pencil you want the dress to be. So for instance, I did 10.25 on the hip. I'm going to subtract 2 inches. I'll end up with 8.25. So that's what I'll be marking at the bottom. But if I don't want it to really be pencil, I'll remove 1.5. Remember, the more you increase the number from 2 upwards, it's going to be more pencil, because we're still going to have slits on the dress. So I'll mark 8.25 at the bottom of this dress. We're going to work with the same sewing allowance we added at the top part. So we'll add 2 inches sewing allowance to every part of all the lines. We're adding 2-inch sewing allowance. So if you notice, for this bust and this waist area, it is when we shape the dart, that is when you would see the slimness of the waist. So I'm adding 2-inch to this part. It's better for you to have excess that you can trim off. So now we're going to want to shape the armhole area of this back pattern, but because this is back, the back is not it has shoulder blades, so the chest to chest measurement of the back, that's the chest width, is always the same with the shoulder length, shoulder width measurements. If we were working on the front, you will realize that we will need to go in by 1/2 inch, or we will need to mark the front chest to chest measurement. So, but because this is the back, we don't need to do that. So from here to here, I'm going to just fold my tape like so, and I'll mark the midpoint. This is the midpoint. I'm going to add a 1/2 inch sewing allowance at the edge of the shoulder. That's where we're going to attach the sleeve to. So I'm going to use my armhole curve, and I'll connect from this 1/2 inch we came out by to this point here. I hope you can see it clearly. From this point here to this point here, I'm connecting with my French curve. And then I will take my French curve upwards. You want to make sure that it's not going below this bust line. I'll connect from this point. So we're not going in because this is the back. We don't go in at the back. So now for the dart, You're going to be needing your nipple to nipple measurement, the one you used when we were drafting the upper part of the front. It's an horizontal measurement and you have to divide by 2. So my nipple to nipple measurement is 7. When I divided by 2, it gave me 3.5. And so I will add ½ inch to it. You need to add ½ inch to that measurement. Why? It's for the sewing allowance, which will give me 4 inches. So I'm going to measure 4 inches. I'll place my tape from this center back and mark 4 inches. So for you, it could be different. Just work with the right measurement. Then I'll mark ½ inch on both sides of this mark I just made. I hope we can see that, ½ inch on both sides. ½ inch on the left and ½ inch on the right. So we have 3 marks here now. So the center mark, you want to extend it to touch on the hip. Also extend it upwards to the bust line. Now I'll connect with my ruler. Now connect the other one as well. So I am connecting from that same line on the hip line to the other mark, which is on the left, and I will do the same to the other mark, which is on the right. And I'll do the same on the other side. So this is your dart. So this is where you'll be sewing. You place your take this fabric like this to your machine. Remember that this is on fold. By the time I open up this zip area, it means that you'll be doing for the left side and you'll be doing for the right side. Let's assume this is just a piece. This is just the left side. This is how your fabric will be positioned on your machine, like this. And you'll be making your stitch from here, following this chalk from here like this, and that's it. This is a mark you already have on one side. You don't have it on the other side. So how do you do that? You use your transfer paper and your tracing wheel. When you're folding this fabric, make sure that the wrong side of the fabric is the one you're drawing all this chalk on. So this is the wrong side of the fabric, the inner side of the fabric. So this side is the outer side. So you transfer your marks. It doesn't matter where you start from. Just make sure that the shape you have, the shape of your dart, is reflecting at the under of the fabric. So I want to move it down because my transfer paper is not long enough. Trace the center line. So this is the zip allowance. So this is where we want to work on the waist and this line, the under buttocks line. So all we're just doing is just to we measured 2 inches. If you can remember, we took 2 inches for the zip allowance. So all we're just doing is to take 1 inch off it, half of it, half of whatever is your zip allowance. So if my zip allowance was 1 inch, I'll just mark the center of it. So that's basically what we're doing here. So I'm marking the center on my waistline. If this dress is going to have a slit, you want to consider that, and if it's going to have an overlapping slit, so you can measure from this bottom line upwards, or you can use your tape, put your tape on yourself when you were measuring your full length, just measure upwards 7 inches from the bottom of the dress where you want the dress to end. 7 to 8 inches is fine, so that I can enable you walk freely, because it's a pencil dress, so we need to have that slit there. So I'm putting my tape from here, not from here. Remember, this is just folding allowance. Our dress actually ends here. So from here upwards, I'll mark 8 inches. This mark from this under buttocks that I extended, I would make sure that it ends at this new 8 inches mark, because I need this 2 inches allowance for the overlapping of the slits. Now it's time to shape the dress itself. So ideally here is supposed to curve in, but because I said we are going to be taking this dart, by the time we shape this dart, that shape that is supposed to curve will reflect. So don't bother about if it's not you're not seeing the shape well from this side yet. It's not a problem. By the time, that's why you're shaping the dart. That's what this dart is meant for. So it's supposed to, this excess that you're seeing here, we'll take it out from here, provided your measurements are correct. Please do make sure that you stop at that beginning of the slit. Don't cut directly, give it a little, like half-inch allowance. So I folded this, I divided the hip measurements by 4 and I added 2 inches to it. Because this is the front part, it doesn't require the zip. So we're not adding zip allowance to it. So we're going to be using this edge here as our center front. So we don't need to rule any line as a vertical line. So from this area here, I'm going to be marking my waistline. This is our waistline. When we measured from the shoulder to the waist, we had 15 inches, which we've already drafted when we were drafting on the pattern paper for the front, the upper front. So you want to make sure that you're minusing that 15 inches. So the full length is 42.5. Place my 15 inches on this line here. I hope you can see that. Remember, what we want to draft is just the waist to the bottom of the dress. So I'll continue like that and mark 42.5. I will add my folding allowance. So 1, 2. So this will be where our folding allowance will end. Please make sure that 15 inches is still standing on the waistline. From our waist to hip, we have 8 inches. This is where our hip line is. I'll place my tape like so, 4 inches from this edge on my waistline, and I'll mark 4 inches, and I'll mark ½ inch on both sides of that 4 inches mark. Mark downwards, place my tape from the waistline and mark 5 inches downwards. 5 inches, that's the dart length. So I need to extend this. So we have 3 marks here, 1, 2, 3. So the center of the center one, the center mark, we need to extend it to that 5 inches. So we're going to extend from this 5 inches mark here to touch the left side. So it's either left or right, whichever one, just both marks on both sides of the 4 inches mark, like so. And we do the other side. The next thing you want to do is to mark all your circumference measurements. So our waist divided by 4, and we're going to add this 1 inch. If you measure this dart, the distance of this dart from the left to the right is a total of 1 inch. So we need to add it to whatever measurement we have here. So we have on the waist measurement is 30 divided by 4 is 7.5. So 7.5 plus 1 inch is 8.5. So I'm going to mark 8.5 here. Place your tape from the center front like so, and I'll add my sewing allowance, 2 inches sewing allowance. My hip divided by 4 is 41 divided by 4 is 10.25, and I'll mark 10.25 here. Plus 2 inch sewing allowance. Now for this bottom area, because when we're drafting the back, we subtracted 2 inches from the measurement. So this is 10.25. If I remove 2 inches to give me 8.25. So I will mark 8.25 and add my 2 inches sewing allowance. So just like we did for the back, I would place my transfer paper beneath the dart and I would trace. So we need ½ inch sewing allowance. We had already added at the top part, so we need to add at this bottom part. So please, sewing allowances are very important. So I'm connecting all the points together. So I'm connecting from the hip to the bottom of the dress. This is a good face of the fabric, so just so you can see the shape. So what we're going to do next is to add our sewing allowance, ½ inch. Remember this arrow, I said this arrow, add sewing allowance ½ inch, so please don't forget to do that. Please notch the center points. Notch, this is how to notch. And also notch the center point at the top part. Still on a good face of the fabric. So I've added ½ inch sewing allowance at this part of the panel. This is the right and this is the left. Please, there's something you should take note of. This part here is longer than this part here. So for this part here to match up with the length of this part here, you need to extend here to go up by ½ inch so that it will match up with the height of this, aside the sewing allowance. So you go up by half an inch. So this is half an inch. It means that I'm going to still add extra half inch for the sewing allowance, and I'll connect with my ruler. This is so that you don't have shortage. Trust me, if you don't do this, you'll end up with shortage of fabric, the length. So at the end of the day, by the time I want to match up this one and this one, they would match up together. I will not have any shortage. We're going to attach this to this side, this and this to this side. So what we want to do now is to cut the pad, the breast pad. And one thing you should take note of is position the breast pad in such a way that the shiny parts, that's where the gum is, that's the part that you will iron to the beneath this fabric that you can see. So remember, this is the good face of the fabric. So the bad face should be facing the gummy part of the breast pad, and that applies to this as well. Let's go like this. I'm using this color because this is white and my chalk is white, so you won't be seeing the shape well. So I'll stop here and I'll mark this is the point of the underbust. And this is how wide I want the breast part to come to. So I'm going to bend my fabric this way and I'll just mark here at the underbust area. So I'm doing the same here too. This is the underbust. I'm marking at the top here. And I'll stop somewhere around here because I'm stopping here. So I'll stop somewhere around here. And I want the breast cup to come to somewhere around here. So it's not really like there's a certain measurement, just provided it's covering like majority, the major part of the breast. So all I'm doing now is to curve it. So that's what you want to achieve. So indicate left because this is for the left. Take this off as well. You can see I'm extending it up to this point here. So right, so this is for the right. So I'm going to do the same for this part as well. This is the underbust and this is the underbust. So I'm following the shape. I'll stop somewhere around here. I'll do the same for this side. So I'll take it off. And this one is going to go straight because I just want it to be one piece. So this is center point. And this is the center point. The bottom of this breast pad will be positioned at the underbust in line with the shape you just drafted. You iron it. Sometimes you can, when you iron, you use a stitch. You take it to the machine and you stitch just this tip this way like this just to secure it. You do the same for every other part. I need this color this one here matches with this one, and the yellow matches with this yellow here. So we want to cut the sleeve of this dress. It's an A-line sleeve. The bottom of the sleeve has a wide volume, like I explained earlier. I'll be using this like this as the length, and like this as the width of the sleeve. So this is how I'll be folding. So I'll pick the bottom of it, one edge, and I would bend it like an A shape. This folded edge here will be my center sleeve, and like this will be the length, and like this will be the width of the sleeve. So now we're going to start from the bottom of the sleeve, because that's the widest part of we have to start with the widest measurement. The widest part is where the volume, the bottom of the sleeve is, and when I took that measurement I had 24. So if I divide 24 by 2, it should give me 12, plus my sewing allowance, like 1 inch sewing allowance is fine. That should give me a total of 13. So I'll be measuring 13 as the wideness from this center, from this folded edge. So this is 13. So I have, it's a bit I folded it too much, so I need to bring it back so that we don't waste fabric. So this is actually fine. 13. Let's say I'm going to make here the bottom of my sleeve. So I'll be marking my measurements from this point here. So I'll measure the full length of the sleeve. The full length of this sleeve is 25. So I'll mark 25 here. And I'll use my ruler to make a straight line. So now I'm going to measure from this line here. I need to have my bicep line. So I'll be going down by 4 inches. Make a straight line there as well. So this is where I'm going to measure my bicep measurement. So the circumference, when I took that measurement, it was 13. So if I divide it by 2, it should give me 6.5. So I'm going to mark 6.5 here. And then I'll add 1 inch sewing allowance, or 1/4. So this is 1/4. So this is my sewing allowance. So what you want to do next is to carve it. You need to create that sleeve carved from this part to where the bicep is. You can use your French curve, but I always prefer to use my free hand. So at this bottom part here, I'm going to measure the volume of the bottom of the sleeve. So there's something to take note of. I measured the full length from this part to this, so from this point to this point, 25. Actually, my natural sleeve length, full length from the edge of my shoulder to the end, so this point here is actually 21, but I made it 25. I added extra, it's 21, so I made it 25, so I added 4 inches to that measurement. Why did I do that? I did that because if you want to create volume, you want that fullness around the bottom part of the sleeve. You don't make it the exact length of your sleeve. You have to add, you have to make the length longer, so that by the time you gather it around here, it's going to be, when it's longer, it will create that volume and that fullness around the end of the sleeve. So this is the point we're working with. So I'll connect this point to this point with my ruler. From here, I'm going to measure 25. That's the length of the sleeve, and I'll connect them like so. I'm going to add 1.5 at the bottom. That's what I'll use to sew in my elastic rubber band. This extra I added is not just for the bottom part, because we're going to need 1/2 inch to at this part here to attach it back to the dress. So it's either you want to add it here, or when you add it here, by the time you sew it in, it's going to balance up. So that 0.5 is what I'm going to use to attach this point here, this part here, to the dress, and the 1 inch is what I will use to fold in the rubber band to the bottom of the sleeve. So I'm notching the center point, because when we are sewing it to the dress, it should match up with the center point of the shoulder of the dress. So this is just one sleeve for one hand. I'm going to cut another one like this, another pair like this for the left side of the sleeve. So I can actually use this for either the right or the left, and I'll have to cut another one. So I'll just do the same thing I just did now. So I have 2 of this piece, one for the left and one for the right. But there's something you need to do here. We need to open this up like this. So I'm picking, opening it up like this, both of them like this. So I'm just going to shape one side. So I'll leave this side. Let me write X here. So the X is for the back, just to indicate which is going to go for the back and which will go for the front. So this is the back, this will be for the front. So I want to shape here a bit, like 1/2 inch at this point here. I hope we can see this clearly.